Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I'm Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. This is another silly season update because it's the summer and we're going to talk about several topics. But the one that we're going to start with is actually some good news. We actually do have some good news we're going to talk about, and that's the new contract for Luc De Fougerolles, who signs a new deal with Fulham. We'll go through that because I think that's a positive signing for Fulham Football Club. I had a feeling it was going to happen, but now it's official. He's got some interesting quotes that I'll be sharing with Tony and everyone to talk about during the show. We also have some speculation. We also have some other topics to get through as well. Why haven't Fulham made a signing? I want to ask Tony what he feels is the reason behind it. Maybe there are a couple of reasons. And then also, we're going to discuss why many of Fulham's competitors in the Premier League are selling some of their best players. And what should Fulham do? Should Fulham keep their best players? I have some strong feelings about that. I'm sure Tony does as well. So before we get going with the show, I do want to mention once again the special offer I have for listeners of Cottage Talk, Fulham supporters. Please accept my gift for 2 free months on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. This episode that we're streaming live, video will still be up there on YouTube, on Cottage Talk Facebook page, and on X. But if you want to listen to it, it's going to be exclusive on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. So one of the things I want to mention is that if you're interested, please do check out on X. It's pinned to my X account, pinned to the Cottage Talk X account. It's also on Cottage Talk Facebook page. Just access it there. I'm going to show you what it looks like in just a second because I really want people to take me up on this offer. It's 2 months. So I really want to show everyone what the Cottage Talk Patreon page is all about. So please take a look at this and claim now. Actually, 16 people have claimed it since I started this offer. I really want 100 people. And if 100 sign up for 2 free months, I'll probably offer more. But I really want people to take advantage of this. And because especially these next 2 months, if you do it now, we're going to share some really good content with you. Okay, enough of that. Enough talking about the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Let's talk some Fulham, Tony. Let's start with the huge news, Tony, and I think this is very positive news. Before I share some quotes from Luc De Fougerolles, which you can see on Fulham's website from an article, I want to just get your opening thoughts about this, I guess you could say, re-signing of Luc. I think this is a player that has the potential to be a starting center back for Fulham for years to come, 19 years old. What do you make of the signing?
Yeah, good evening, Russ. Good evening, everybody watching. Look, it's great to have some good news. We needed something. It's been very quiet on the old Western Front at the moment. So this is great news. This is like a Fulham making a marquee signing for me because it was imperative that we got pen to paper, got it signed. He's here for another 4 years, which is great. I think we all know that contracts actually probably don't mean as much as they used to. But look, he's here. I'm hoping that Marco Silva starts to think about including him in the squad for next season, or certainly in and around it. My gut feeling tells me that he's more than likely to go on loan somewhere because, he won't want to be playing under 21 football and he'll want to get, experience playing men's football, more than likely the Championship, somewhere like that, or maybe a nice little move away to Italy or Germany. But we'll see. But look, it's great news. He's a local boy. He's been at the club since I think 9, is it? And yeah, he's a very talented footballer, Russ. He, out of all the young players that have come through, including Josh King, this boy has got bags and bags of potential. Bags.
He does, Tony. And one interesting part of this story about Luc signing again with Fulham is some of the quotes that he shared, like I said, on Fulham's website. I'm going to share that right now while we do the show. I'm going to read them to everyone because I find them interesting, really interesting. So let me just share that with everyone, and I'll read some of the quotes because, again, it talks about a 19-year-old that really just sharing his thoughts about this move. This is from the article from Jeff Bruce. Luc De Fougerolles was delighted to commit his future to his boyhood club on Friday, pending a deal that ties him to Fulham until the summer of 2029. The 19-year-old center back has been with us for more than a decade now. So does it feel like home in SW6? Here are the quotes from Luke himself. It really does. He said, quote, "It's my local club. I went to loads of games growing up. I know all the staff, all the players. It's a great club, and I love it here. So signing a new contract is amazing, and I can't wait to have another 4 years here." Then goes on another quote, "My whole family are Fulham fans. They obviously want what's best for me, but they do want me to play for Fulham, as I do as well. I was just happy to get it across the line. Hopefully I can start playing some games and make the fans happy. The goal is playing for Fulham, which is something I've wanted to do for a while now." So that was one of the main reasons for signing the contract and signing the length of contract to give me the best chance of playing for Fulham at some point. So that's the plan, to get into the first team and start playing some games. I'm glad that it has been done, and I'm excited for the season ahead and what's it going to bring. Okay, Tony, that is right from the words of Luc De Fougerolles. What are your thoughts about what he shared there?
Yeah, very positive. He's clearly very settled, clearly wants to show that he is good enough. And I think hi Chris, he's shown his performances with Canada that he's more than capable. I mean, I know people will say, well, it's only Canada and so on and so forth. But look, you can't get away from the fact that when you're talking about centre backs and the quality of centre backs out there, and a lot of them lack the technical qualities that that have sort of been lost over the years. Now it's all about physical power and presence and all of that. This boy is technically very, very good. He can play out through the back. He's comfortable with the ball at his feet. He's comfortable receiving the ball with his back to his own goal, etc. So we want to encourage him. We want him to grow. And as I said, for me, he moves along the pecking order in terms of some of the centre halves we've got. And he can learn a hell of a lot from Anderson and Bassey in terms of experience.
Right.
But in terms of the quality that he brings, I think that Marco Silva has to really, really consider about how much he's involved with us this year. And for me, he's got to be a part of the squad.
I want him part of the squad for this season, Tony, and I expect him to be in Portugal, and hopefully he will be able to showcase what I've already seen, what I saw 2 seasons ago, what I saw with Canada, what I've seen for the under 21s. This is a player that I think truly believe. And again, you've watched a lot of football in your life. You know good center backs when you see it. He's only 19 years old. He has the potential to be a starting center back in the Premier League for Fulham and be a good one as well. It's all there. The ability is there, but the instincts are there. That to me is what really I think is potentially going to set him apart. No fear. He plays with no fear at 19, and he's only going to get better. That's what's exciting about this. So what do you do, Tony? Do you send him out on loan? Listen, there were comments from Luke when he was playing for Canada that he might be looking for a loan deal. Do you do that? Or does he fight for a spot with Fulham this season? There are things you can do. Maybe you send him out on loan with the opportunity to call him back. You could do that. So this is what the interesting conundrum, Tony, because you just mentioned that he could learn a great deal from the center backs already there. What's more valuable, playing regularly, which I think is very valuable, or staying at Fulham right now to fight for a position and learn from the center backs that are there? it's an interesting issue that I think we have with Luc De Fougerolles. What to do with him?
I know what I would do, but I think that I personally I don't see Silva having him in his mind in terms of starting or being in and around it. I think Luke is at a very crucial crossroads in his career. He needs to be playing, and he needs to be playing regularly at this level or the level below.
Yep.
What I would do is probably get him out on loan to a high-end championship team, a team that obviously plays football, wants to get the ball down and are technically good on the ball. So something like a Southampton or something like that.
Okay.
Get him a 6-month loan, get him playing regularly, and see how he copes with, the hub and bub of the championship. We know it's a very competitive league. I think it would be great for his development, because realistically, Silva's not going to throw him in ahead of Diop, Cuenca, Anderson, Bassett. It's just not going to happen unless he's had a premonition overnight and realised that now's the time. So get him. I think he'd be wasted in another season in under-21 football. I really do. I
totally
don't
agree
think
with that.
That will be beneficial for him on any level. So get him out, get him a good 6 month, bring him back at Christmas, evaluate it at Christmas, see how he's been doing, see how he's getting on. Obviously, we'll know where Fulham are roughly sort of around that time. And that might be the time to sort of throw him in, Russ,
Okay, so our friend Chris is with you. I'm with Coach Tony, loaning him out for 6 months, and I understand the logic behind that, because I think it's a difficult one, because everything screams to me I want him to be at Fulham. But if I'm being realistic, like you said, Tony, I don't think he's going to start ahead of the players you just mentioned. So let him play with the idea of bringing him back on a short-term basis to a team, and like you said, evaluate at Christmas time. And if he's made that jump, then you have to consider your situation. You have to see how your starting center backs are playing, and also all the center backs in general. So even though I want him to stay at Fulham, and I see what Gary's saying as well, that, and again, listen, Gary, I agree with you on this. I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm not Marco Silva. Tony's not Marco Silva. And I think Marco Silva right now is going to go with the experience. That's what he generally has done. So this kid has to really show him something. But if he also has a good extended loans, as Tony said, using Southampton as an example, maybe that shows him enough to give him a real crack at this. So, Tony, I do understand your plan, but again, part of me just wants him to be at Fulham. But I know what you're saying. I don't see it realistically happening.
Yeah, Gary makes a good point. Yeah, he is absolutely technically much better than Diop. The only thing Diop's got on him is experience and probably a better physical presence, but that's it. From a football perspective, it's chalk and cheese. I think we also have to be very mindful of the fact that we don't want to set him up to fail, Russ, and that's also really important. But it's always that chicken and egg situation: is when is the right time to unleash a young player? And I think maybe now is the time. I mean, I could see him honestly on a 6-month loan at somewhere like Southampton under Will Still, who is a very forward-thinking, very good coach, believes in young players. I think he would get the best out of him. And I think it would be a really good opportunity for him to go and play regularly in men's football and get used to that physicality. And then, as I said, reevaluate it at Christmas. We all want him to play, Russ. We all want our young players to come through and play, but it's also got to be the right timing. And the problem is that what message does it send out to players like Diop, Anderson, Cuenca, if suddenly Silva goes, do you know what? I'm going to throw Luc De Fougerolles in there now. Yeah. Can imagine someone like Anderson, how that's going to look. £30 million centre back sitting on the bench, and a 19-year-old, is taking his place. It just doesn't bode well for a whole host of things. So, yeah, however much I want him to play, and I think he's good enough, I really do. I think maybe he just needs that experience to go and play a bit of men's football and get into it a little bit.
See, Gary here brings up a good point. Gary, I'm with you, but I just see what Tony's talking about with the situation at hand. It's almost like he needs to prove himself at another level to really catch the eye of Marco to make that move. And then you also have to see how Anderson and Diop play while he's gone. I think this is what's going to happen. I do hope that he's with us in Portugal so he gets a chance to play with these guys. Like you said, I think he could benefit by playing and being around those players. But at some point, I want him to have that opportunity. Tony, listen, I've seen this many times when you have the experienced player gets that chance to play, and then there's a player behind him, an up-and-coming player that never gets that opportunity. And sometimes you have to make a different move to make a change, to force a change. If he plays so well, then maybe that forces the change of Marco. So it's an interesting situation that we have with him. Okay, Tony, very good stuff. Like I said, this is all positive to begin. So I want to just stick with talking about some of the young players. We just talked about Luke. That's a positive. I'm curious your thoughts about this one. Devin Tanton is now going back out on loan, Tony, to Chesterfield. Now, he got injured last time that he went to Chesterfield, but sounds like based on everything that I've read from there, they really wanted him back and they really valued him. Now, I've also heard the argument, why is he going to League Two, right? Why is he going so far down? I think it has something to do with the connection I mentioned just before with the manager of Chesterfield and the under 21 manager of Fulham. That I think there's a connection there that has something to do with this. But for Tanton, I think Tanton's still a player that is in Fulham's plans, or I don't think they're sending him out on loan so early too. What are your thoughts about Tanton?
Yeah, look, I think it's a good fit for him. Obviously, it's worked out there before. Obviously, his last loan deal there was cut short because of injury. But look, the reality is with Tete and Castagna currently occupying those two areas, he's not going to get a sniff unless something drastic happens to both of them. So I think that for him, again, it's good to be playing at that level, getting experience, playing with men, playing in a, quite a physical league. It'd be good for his physical development. And, if something does happen to the two right backs, we've got the option to bring him back and give him a chance. But I get the feeling now at his age, again, he's at that sort of age where is he going to get the chance to eventually get an opportunity to play first team football at Fulham? And maybe he's looking at that and thinking, well, now Tete signed a new contract, Castagna's still there. I'm way down the pecking order. He just wants to play football. And another one that doesn't want to play under 21 football. He wants to play men's football. So, yeah, I think it's a good fit. Get him out, get him playing, get him that experience, keep him ticking over. And at some point, they have to make a decision when they feel that he's ready to make that step up or not, as the case may be, in which case they will end up selling him probably.
That's what's interesting about this. This is a little bit different than Luke's situation because Devin Tanton's older. I believe he's 22, if I remember correctly. So this almost is a put up or shut up for him. So I understand why he would want to make the move because he's not going to play at Fulham right now with the right backs that are currently there. So he needs the opportunity to showcase himself. So I totally understand from Devin's perspective. I don't know. It's a good point, Tony. They're going to have to make a decision pretty soon, within a year, what they want to do with Devin Tanton. I still think that there's a lot of talent there, but only time will tell is if they keep him or, like you said, if they sell him. And that could happen as well. We're going to have to wait and see, but I'm not against this loan for Devin Tanton. I wish him the best, and hopefully it works out. Okay, Tony, now let's talk about a situation that is a difficult one for Fulham Football Club. They do have a young player. They are developing all these young players that are starting to get noticed. Here's one that's gotten noticed. His name is Seth Ridgen. Now, Seth Ridgen, sharing an article this morning from Hammy and was talking about Fulham are fighting, and I believe that they are fighting to try to hold on to Seth Ridgen. But he has a lot of interest. And right before we went live, I read some tweets about interest from Manchester United. It's real, and they are going after him. And that is something that would be a disappointment. So what are your thoughts about this, Tony? And I think it's a hard one because the player has to want to like sign a contract. Like we have all those scholar contracts that just were announced. He wasn't one of them, and that made people nervous. I think now we know why. What are your thoughts about this situation?
Well, it's got Harvey Elliott written all over it, hasn't it? I mean,
It does.
when you've got a young player that's the under-17 England captain, right? England captain, exactly. Suddenly, all the big I ams, their heads raise above the parapet, and they're all looking. So Man City, Man U, Arsenal, Tottenham, whoever it is, they suddenly think, well, we haven't been able to develop a player of that quality to get to that level. So, who can we go to now and look at bringing in a young player to develop? Now, if I'm a young Seth Ridgen and I'm already made it as an under-17 England captain, I'm staying put at Fulham. Why would I want to go to Manchester United, who have been on the decline for the last 6 years?
Does not make sense.
Why would I do that? I'm settled. I'm happy. I'm developing well. I'm in a good place in my career. My next step is I'm going to fight to try and get into that first team squad, right? That's what I'm going to try and do. If I believe in myself, if I back myself, I'm staying on that pathway, and that's the way I'm going. But as we all know, it doesn't work like that, Russ. And money talks, agents talk, contracts talk. And at the end of the day, if Manchester United come in and offer Fulham an undisclosed fee, which will be millions, and then offer him, 30 grand a week, he's gone.
Yeah. Listen, this is a hard one because I think we both know what we feel is the right move for a young player, 16-year-old, to develop at Fulham Football Club. And Manchester United, I don't know, maybe in 3 to 5 years could be back on the rise, and maybe that's what he's looking at. It could also be that mystique of Manchester United going back to the golden years when they had that group with, when you had Beckham going way, way back when they had all that youth, all those youngsters. Maybe they're trying to sell him on that. I don't know. But I just think that the setup at the academy at Fulham has just been phenomenal for development. And the grass isn't always greener. And but like you said, Tony, it's a good point. When you have money probably going to be thrown your way or promised your way and a good situation thrown your way, it makes it difficult. But we're going to have to wait and see on this. And like I said, I think Fulham are going to give their best effort to hold on to him. Then it'll just come down to the player. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I've said it a million times, and I probably just said it. Grass is not always greener, but we'll see what happens with Seth Ridgen. And this one I don't put on Fulham. This is just a decision for a player and a family, Tony. They have to make the decision themselves. This is, again, we've run into this before. I can't put this one on Fulham. This is a family decision for Seth Ridgen and his family.
Do you know what? I think it's got to get to a stage where the directors at Fulham and the people involved in the academy side of the club, they need to start making a decision about what it is they want our academy to be. What is the end-term goal, the long-term goal of our academy? Because at the moment, we're a breeding ground to offer players the opportunity to go and play for other clubs. And they're going off. And in the main, a lot of them are having very successful runs in teams or whatever. And it's so frustrating to see these young players that that have been at the club for, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, not getting an opportunity, walking out the door and then going to do it elsewhere. And it's just like, that for me, it's just very frustrating because every other club seems to manage to bring through young players and give them the opportunity. Arsenal being, a prime example. Look at the youngsters they brought through in the last season and a half, right?
Yep.
And all right, I know people say, well, that's Arsenal, but why can't we be like Arsenal?
Why not? I say the same thing, Tony. Why not? Why do we just accept who they are and not what they can become? That's what I keep saying.
Yep.
Where is the ambition? You have an ambitious manager. Match the ambition. Go for it. And we're going to talk about that coming up in just a few minutes when we talk about why Fulham have not signed a player yet. because this is rinse and repeat. We talked about this a month ago, but the question is, why is it rinse and repeat? Why have they not signed players? Where is the urgency? Why is this season like the last 2 seasons? We're going to get to that because it's very frustrating. It is. And I understand that Fulham have a really good base for the upcoming season. But what do they want to be? And that's what we're going to talk about in just a few minutes, because I really want to get into why Fulham have not signed a player yet. It's not a surprise, but I want to really delve into the reasons behind it. But before we do that, Tony, you wanted to talk a little bit about it. Let's talk about something.
There's one more youngster I want to mention that we need to say goodbye to, which is Adrian Pagliazitti.
Yes.
Who has been at the club for 11 years.
That's
and
right.
Also another one now that's gone. Hadjic split, off he goes.
Yep.
So, that's just another example.
That's a very good point. I'm glad that you mentioned him. Just another example of a player that just simply has moved on. Yep. All right, Tony, let's now just change the direction a little bit. Something that has been bugging you. Let's talk about that now. How about the training kit?
Jesus Christ. I mean, they couldn't pay me to wear that, right? Seriously. You've got a million colours in the world that you could pick for training kit, right? And Fulham decide to go for Royal Chelsea Blue. Are they taking the absolute piss, Russ? I'm being deadly serious. Whoever made that decision needs to be sacked. And any Fulham fan that buys it should have their season ticket confiscated. Absolute joke. I mean, it's just embarrassing.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my rant over.
Okay. And listen, I understand the rant, and I'm with you on the rant. Chris, I'm sorry I didn't have that prepared to show the kit, but I will in a future episode, and maybe you'll understand why Tony's very upset here. I think you'll understand. Being a fan of Liverpool, say if they decided to, I don't know,
go for Everton Blue.
Right, Everton Blue, how would you feel? Or the colors of Manchester City, how would you feel? You probably wouldn't like it too much. So that's kind of where Tony's going on this, I'm sure. Chris, Gary Cooper agrees with you. Good man, Gary. Good man. All right. Okay. So let's now switch back to really talking about what I really want to get into with a couple very good topics. Let's start here because you and I have already done a show called Rinse and Repeat. And I mentioned this to you, Tony, that this is nothing different than the last 2 seasons. The first season back in the Premier League, they got their business done a little bit earlier because they brought in Paulinho, and that set everything up. They felt the urgency. I look at the Paulinho situation as a marker. Okay, we're going for it. We're going to do things a little bit different this time. We're going to bring in this quality player, build around him. That was 3 years ago with Paulinho. The last 2 seasons, they've waited and waited and waited. Tony, we are established in the Premier League. We are a mid-table team. I'm going to say it right now. That's who they are. I've been a fan of not just Fulham Football Club, but other clubs locally here. And when you have an opportunity to take it to the next level, you should not be looking at it and just say, we're going to continue to do the way things are being done. They need to change their mindset. I think that they are stuck in this situation where they want to make good deals. They want to make good quality signings. They're looking for it at their price. They know the farther into the window that it goes, the prices will drop, and they might get their player at their price. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that, Tony. For me, it's about taking Fulham to the next level. You need to invest in quality to get to that next level. They are holding themselves back. They can be mid-table with making just normal moves. They need to go above and beyond that, Tony. I just think that they are continuing to do the strategy that they've done the last 2 seasons instead of doing what they should be doing and bringing in a higher quality players, 3, 4, that will take Fulham to the next level. They have the base already. They have the foundation, but they're not going to get there if they just bring in players that are good players. They need players with a lot of upside, young players that they can build around and continue to grow. Why do you think Fulham have not signed anyone yet? Is it just a continuation of what we've been talking about? You got to be frustrated. We're all frustrated. That's why I want to talk about this.
I think it's every Fulham's fan's frustration, Russ. I think that you've got to take the emotion out of it first and foremost. And I think there are multifacets to this issue. And look, only the people behind the scenes, the owners, the manager, the coaches, etc., will know exactly, what's going on and why, this situation arises season upon season. However, my view on it is that obviously you've still got a few senior players that haven't signed their contracts yet.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that, they're trying to get all of that sorted out. Why it's taking so long and we're still in this, situation on the 11th of July is anybody's guess, but we are where we are. I also think that the other reason is because Marco Silva is after a specific player for a specific formation, structure, whatever you want to, you look at. And he wants to make sure that the player or players that he is going to bring in fit the mold and model of what he's trying to achieve with Fulham. And that isn't always an easy thing to do. Names can be thrown out there, right? And we've had hundreds of names thrown out since, the end of the season, but they have to be realistic. I would like nothing more than Harvey Elliott to come back to Fulham. I know he's, a lot of Fulham fans don't want to entertain the idea and what have you, but in terms of, putting the history aside, because Fulham, football fans are very fickle anyway.
Yep.
As a footballer, as a technician, he's as good as anything we've got at Fulham. And I would love him to come to Fulham. But is that realistic? Is he that sort of player that's going to be able to fit into Marco Silva's structure when he's already got Pereira, Smith Rowe, that he's been trying to get a tune out of for about a year? Yeah. So you've got to think about all of that. And also, we're sort of top heavy in certain areas as well.
Right.
I'd like nothing more than another centre back. But is that realistic? So yes, it's frustrating. Yes, every time I pick up the paper, I see, another player, Kudos, has gone to Tottenham, and this one's
going to talk about that. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, what are we waiting for? Why? And the thing is that the Khans are the 13th wealthiest sports owners in the world.
Absolutely.
In the world. So there is not one player on this planet that they couldn't approach or offer or sign if they wanted to, right? If they wanted to. I know it has to be within the fair play rules and all of that. I get all that. But we can realistically go and approach any player that's available or, wants to look or is looking to move on or is a realistic target.
Yep.
And those are the reasons why I think it takes us so long to get our, house in order in that regard, because of those, issues that I've just alluded to.
Sure. And it's a good point, Tony. I'm glad that you brought up the Marco factor, because not only are you looking for players, but you're looking for specific players to play a certain way for Marco Silva. So that is a factor. It basically just drives down the amount of players you're looking at, right? Because he's looking for a particular player. I get all that, okay? But they've also had a lot of time to look at these players. And my point, and I'm going to share this, because now you're getting into the time where if you bring in the players now, they can really get going from the beginning of preseason and really start the season out strong. And I think it affected Fulham that Smith Rowe didn't come from the beginning, Tony. Okay? So I'm going to share this from Gary. Gary's spot on this. So he says, plus preseason is important for integrating new players. So this is what makes me nuts. Listen, I could even bring up the point that they got Iwobi at the end of the transfer window when they brought him in. That affected him. It affected him because it took him a full year, Tony, to really get back to being exactly the player that Marco wanted him to be. They need him in sooner than later. So then it gets to me the point, like you said, the 13th richest owner. And if they have identified a player, it's difficult. Up the ante on the transfer fee, up the ante on what you're going to offer the player. If you want him bad enough, if Marco wants him bad enough, at some point you got to make it happen. Or you're going to settle for second, third, or fourth, or fifth choice. And that could end up taking longer. I just envision right now, because where we are right now, unless things change right now, it's going to be rinse and repeat, Tony. They're going to get to Portugal, and I don't know, maybe a player will be there. Wouldn't it be nice to have 3 new faces in there?
I don't disagree. And Gary absolutely makes a very valid point. The problem is Fulham's pre-season has been a bit of a joke, to be honest with you, because they've only just, sort of got round to arranging it. So apparently we're now playing 2 behind the closed doors
games I just saw
against
that. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Aberdeen and West Brom, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then the players are going on a jolly to Portugal to play Nottingham Forest. I mean, you can't make it up. What the hell are we doing going to Portugal to play Nottingham Forest for? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And also, I think Chris alluded to the fact about scouts. The club has scouts that are, scouring Europe and God knows where, looking at players. Surely, when you get to end of April, as a manager, where you need to improve, where you need to strengthen, and you must have in the back of your mind a number of players identified that you want to bring into your football club. Right. Season finished in May. We're now in July.
That's what's crazy about this, Tony. Okay.
And we've got no clue. Yes, we've been linked to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but we've got absolutely nothing concrete in terms of this is, and actually tonight, I think they came out about talking about a player at Inter Milan.
Yeah.
He's 32 years old.
I know.
Right? He can't hit a barn door in the Serie A league. I think he scored 4 goals in 33 games. And you want to bring him to the Premier League, one of the quickest, fastest leagues in the world? No, it's a nonsense. I'm sorry. Yeah, he's right. Boy Scouts. Yeah, absolutely. Dib. It's ultimately, it's an area of the club that has been poorly run for many, many seasons. They've got away with it because of, some of the personnel they've managed to capture and bring in. But on the main, it's an area that the club has really got to improve on, in my opinion, moving forward. If we are to be considered, anything about moving forward in terms of top 10, top 8, whatever, we have to improve in this area.
Tony, I agree with you. And on top of it, and we're going to talk about what the other teams in the Premier League have done. We're the only Premier League team that has not signed a new player. The only team. How the hell is that possible? Well, I think I know how it's possible. We're talking about the reasons why it's possible, but it just screams to me of complacency, happy where we are, and not going the extra mile to take us to the next level, where you have a manager that could really be a manager that could take us to the next level and take himself to the next level. But he needs the players to do that, Tony. You and I have talked about Marco Silva. I don't think Marco Silva is the finished article as a manager. Okay, he's not. But I think if you brought him better players, that might take him to the next level. So get it done. If we're quibbling about the difference between a couple £1,000,000, extend yourself. Extend yourself for the fee. Extend yourself for the wages. Make a splash, as we would say here. I'm telling you, the last time Fulham really made a splash was Paulinho. Yes, you could say it was last season. You could say Smith Rowe, but I think Paulinho was a different type of splash because it really set Fulham that tone that Fulham needed. Emile Smith Rowe was, again, a player that had a lot of potential. Paulinho was already the finished article. Paulinho was.
So on that, Russ, I think playing devil's advocate in answer to your question about Marco Silva.
Yeah.
Do we think he's good enough to take Fulham to the next level? The honest answer to that question is I don't know. But I'll tell you what. Tony Khan, Shahid Khan, back him. Get him the best players, get them in, and let's see if he can take us to the next level. And then we'll know.
See, that's where I'm going, Tony, because he's done this. I've seen managers and coaches do this all the time. they make good players better players, and sometimes they can make them great players. The difference becomes when you get great players, that takes you to the next level. Then you find out really how good not just the team is, but how good the manager is, because you then he has better tools to work with. This is on them to get Marco those tools, and then we'll finally know how good of a manager. I agree with that Marco Silva is, because I think potentially he could be up there with some of the managers that are at the top teams. But until he proves it with Fulham, I think I understand why he's not at one of those teams yet, because I think he still has something to prove. And he could do it with us. Get him the players. Totally get him the players. All right, Tony. Good stuff. Let's move on. A couple more topics I want to get to. And this is one that I really want to just focus on, because we're talking about players. And I just mentioned that Fulham are the only team not to bring in any new players, and every other Premier League team has. But this is one that I really want to just pick your brain on, because this one frustrates me in many ways. It's going to sound strange. I don't like that João Pedro went to Chelsea. Excuse my language that I used a bad word. I don't like the fact that Bournemouth sent their left back to Liverpool. Sorry, Chris, but I don't like that, because it's a strategy, and then they're going to reinvest in money. Brighton have done it for a while. They've done it well. But I don't want to be one of these clubs, Tony. But what do you make of all these clubs around us? They're all doing it. Nottingham Forest is a little bit different, and I want to give them a little bit credit here, because the whole thing with them could take a little bit longer with Morgan Gibbs-White, because it sounds like they're going to fight it because of the clause, the release clause. By the way, I'm going to say this right now. I don't want Fulham to have any release clauses in their contracts, their players. I think that sets you up for situations like this. I know that they can be high. I don't like contracts like that. In fact, I don't know many Fulham players that have release clauses, at least ones that we know of. So I am not for release clauses in Fulham contracts because of what's going on with Morgan Gibbs-White. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, I touched on it before about players' contracts, Russ, and ultimately, contracts now in the world of football mean very little. But if it were me, if I was going to have a release clause in any player's contract, it would be 100 million. That's it, 100 million. You want to come after a player who's on a 4-year contract, then pay the 100 million, and you know what, they can go. But yeah, look, obviously, there's been a deluge of players that have made the move in the last few weeks and months and whatever. Forest have lost another player tonight, Alanga, who's joined Newcastle for 55 million.
Yeah.
Right, so their team's being pulled to pieces. Just a little note, Marco Silva, you might want to make a little bid for their centre half and bring him in. But yeah, look, it's a case of it's the same old. The vultures are there. The big clubs make the big signings, like Bournemouth now getting all their players nicked off them. They've lost some massive players, going to be almost impossible to replace. So Liverpool have strengthened.
Look at Brentford too.
Chelsea have strengthened. Brentford have lost their manager. They've lost. They're going to lose a handful of players. Norgard's gone to Arsenal.
That's right.
So yeah, it becomes hard season upon season. We've touched on it all the place. The cities of this world, the Chelseas, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, etc. They get stronger and stronger and stronger, and the clubs below them get weaker and weaker and weaker. And that's why the league is becoming like that. And that's now why you're watching World Club, Super Cups on TV with, Real Madrid, Barcelona, because that's what the football world wants. They want these big tournaments, big teams, big.
It's not what I want, though. It's not what I want.
It's not what I want. And, but this is the reality of what we're facing. Look, Crystal Palace, they've been completely shafted because it's little Crystal Palace. And,
look what's happened. I'm glad that you brought up Crystal Palace. And now, on top of it, Crystal Palace got relegated to the Conference League.
Disgrace.
I don't even understand how that happens, but it happens.
Absolute disgrace. But meanwhile, Manchester City can carry on, doing what they do.
That's crazy, man.
Not get any punishment. I mean, it's farcical. It's
Yeah.
absolutely farcical. But yeah, look, the clubs are selling their best players because either one, they need the money financially because they're not getting it in through enough crowds or gate receipts or whatever, or they want to use that money to invest it in some other area of the club, like their academy or something like that. So it's very frustrating for fans when you're looking at your prize assets walking out the door. And look, we've had two taken off us in the last, few years with Mitrovic and Polina. We know what it feels like. Just as you're getting, not so much Mitrovic, but just as you're getting to love a player and feel like he's a part of the club, he's gone. And where did he go to? To sit on the bench for 2 seasons? What was the point?
Right, Tony. And that's what's also frustrating. What I think also, I want to give Fulham credit on one thing that I think is a little bit different than some of the clubs we're talking about. All these clubs are doing these moves early. I wouldn't say complicit, but they understand and they're going along with the game to help the bigger clubs, and then they're going to take the money. And like you said, the bigger clubs get stronger and the ones below them get weaker. And that it's a continuing to go on, and Brighton have been able to survive it. I think at some point they're not going to be able to survive it, but they continue to do it, and it's just a formula. Fulham, on the other hand, now you just talked about these 2 players. So we're going to talk about 2 players coming up that I want to just talk about their chances of leaving, okay? And that would be Rodrigo Muniz and Jedi, okay? We'll talk about that coming up next. So one thing that I will say about the Cons, I've been critical of them. This is where I actually have to give them praise. They fight to keep their players. They fought to keep Mitrovic. They fought to keep Paulinho. They didn't just let them go. That's the difference between all these other clubs we're talking about, except for maybe Nottingham Forest with the whole Morgan Gibbs White. They're basically saying, oh, yeah, go ahead. Just meet our price. Fulham have not done that, Tony. That, to me, is a little bit different. I think they do understand the importance of keeping their best players. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, look, I think, again, we're not in a position, because if you let one of your good players go, you've got to replace them. Right. We've suffered a little bit because we never replaced Mitrovic. Let's be honest. We didn't replace him. And that came back to bite us in terms of pushing on potentially for a European spot. Whether that's realistic or unrealistic, it's irrelevant. Yes, I know we got our, maximum full total points in the Premier League last season, but, it almost felt like a bit of a letdown in the end based on where we were and then where we finished. And then, it's Paulinho, another one. We didn't really replace him. We brought in, a player that could do a job, but not as effectively. So ultimately, you sell your prize assets, you're always going to struggle unless you bring in someone as good as or better. Now, I look at Everton, for example, right? They've done a brilliant, shrewd bit of business recently by signing that Thierno Barry from Villarreal, right? Yes. 27 million for an under 21-year-old French, international, right? He is going to be one of the signings of the season, in my opinion. That is the area that Fulham need to go down, is bringing in fresh, good, quality players that can strengthen your team and have got longevity.
No, I hear you, Tony. I do, and I agree with that. And I look at Everton. That's actually a good point, because I think they're trying to do it what I would call the right way. They are trying to strengthen. They might lose players too, but they're trying to get better. So that's going to lead us for the final topic of this episode. This has been fun to do. I'm glad that we've had a chance to talk, my friend. I miss talking to you. So this all leads to talking about, there was a poll that was put up earlier by a gentleman by the name of Puck, and you were just asking the question. He put a pound amount on both of these players. I forget the amount, so I'm just going to ask the question. Should Fulham sell Rodrigo Muniz or Jedi if Fulham are offered silly money? So we can put a number on silly money, but Tony, I'm a big no on both of these, because one, especially, I'll start with Rodrigo Muniz. It makes no sense to sell Muniz. And if a Leeds United supporter is watching, you can go pound sandwich. He's not going to you. Okay. He's not going there. He's not going anywhere, because he's developed here. We should find out exactly the type of player that he is. And if silly money was offered for him, I wouldn't do it, Tony. Then on Jedi, same thing. Now, the only issue that people might have, and you mentioned a figure, what if it's 100 million pounds for Jedi? Well, then that is extremely silly money. I think that goes above and beyond. That's something that I would actually have to consider because of his age. But beyond really crazy silly money, I want to build on what they have. I don't want to sell either one of these players, Tony. I don't. We've just sold 2 other players. I don't think that they need to sell players this summer. If you're going to sell players, how about Andreas Pereira? Let's talk about selling him. Okay, there are a couple other players I would sell before talking about these guys. So what would you do with these 2 players?
Yeah, it's a complex one for me because obviously, well, let's start with Rodrigo Muniz straight away. I'll tell you now, absolutely categorically, no, we do not sell Rodrigo Muniz. Why would we sell a player that we've worked really hard to develop in the last 2-3.5 seasons, and then sell him to one of our rivals, and he now goes on and has an unbelievable career? Absolutely not. We will see the best of Rodrigo Muniz next season and the season after. Right. So we keep hold of him under every circumstance. Jedi is a slightly different one for me, Russ, because my question would be is how much more are we going to get out of Anthony Robinson? That's my question. How much more are we going to get out of him? And I don't think we can
this
get
is
much
who
more,
he is at this point,
much
right?
more out of him, because I think that as a footballer, he's not very good, right? He's athletic, he's quick, right?
I have to share this. Sorry, from Gary Cooper. I have to share. I knew you're going to kick out of that.
I'd sell Pereira for half a pint of beer. You can't beat that, Gary. So for me, I think that you're in a situation. If Liverpool come in and offer silly money for Anthony Robinson, what are we talking? What silly money? 70 million, 80 million? What silly money? But what I'd say is, you can have him for 70 million, but you're going to have to throw in Andy Robertson. And I'll take Andy Robertson over Jedi all day long.
Okay.
And twice on a Sunday. So it depends what you're looking for and what you want from your left back. I just don't think there's much more to come from Anthony Robinson. I think he's a one-trick pony. Everyone knows how he plays. I think we've seen the best of him. He had a great start to the season last year, and then curtailed as he always does. I don't think he's a great defender, Russ. And I think, fair enough, you win. And I just think that defensively, if Fulham are going to kick on, and I've said it a million times, Russell, we need to improve defensively. And that means improving on players in certain areas of our defence. And that's my opinion on it. So I would sell Jedi if the right price.
Yeah. Okay. We're both a hell no on Rodrigo Muniz. We're in agreement on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. And I think that's the right decision to not even, I wouldn't even consider it. And it doesn't sound like Fulham are considering, and they really shouldn't, because I think he is going to continue to improve. So I think that they need to see the best of him with Fulham. Okay. So I want to share this comment here from Paul and get your thoughts here, Tony. What are you guys hoping to get from the transfer window? So far, we haven't tonight anyone. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm hoping to get a better version of Andreas Pereira. That's for sure. Right, a much better version. And for me, Harvey Elliott fits that bill all day long. And if that's realistic, I'd be all over that. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, I know not everybody's cup of tea, but I think he's worth a punt, Russ. I really, really do. Okay. I think he's still got something to offer, and for a freebie, Fulham have got nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Okay. And then obviously, in my opinion, we need to bring in another top-class centre-half from somewhere, because that's an area where I just think we're just not good enough. Okay,
so let's go back to that, because you mentioned this earlier, and we started the show talking about Luke, right? Calvin Bassey is one that we think will be with Fulham for several years to come, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, we're talking about the right center back position. So if you do that, do you then block the opportunity in, say, a year or two with Luke if you bring in someone like that, Tony?
Yeah, there is that argument, obviously. But like I said, I think 19 Luke, I think, he's still got a good 2 years to develop and to get to himself probably to the physical, place where he needs to be in order to be able to manage that physicality of the centre forwards of that play in the Premier League. So I think that's where Fulham will be looking at it. But I'm talking short term, Russ, in terms of plug in an area where we kept 5 clean sheets last season.
Yep.
No,
I get where you're going.
Yeah,
I get where you're going on that. All right. Now I want to share again this from Paul because I want to just finish up talking about the striker position because you mentioned the Iranian striker from Inter Milan. Fulham have been rumored to a couple different strikers. One was a Nigerian striker with Genk, and then there was another striker in the Turkish league that they've been rumored to. And you just mentioned Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So let's talk a little bit about this, Tony, because this goes back to what I said earlier about Mitra, right? Right now, Rodrigo Muniz, Raul Jimenez, they're not Mitra. So would you bring in Calvert-Lewin? And if you bring in Calvert-Lewin, you're not going up. You're not getting a real up-and-coming striker. So if you had your druthers, if it was Calvert-Lewin or a striker on the rise, which direction would you go?
I just think for me, Calvert-Lewin has Premier League experience. He knows the league. He's played in it. Yes, he's suffered injuries. I get that. But a fit Calvert-Lewin has shown that he can do it in the Premier League. Okay. And we all know how Silva is with players. We all know he gets the best out of, more often than not, gets the best out of players. And as I said, on a freebie, why would you look to sign? This is just my rationale around it. Why would you look to sign a 32-year-old Iranian
I'm with you on this one.
Football player playing for Inter Milan who can't hit a barn door, who struggles to score goals in Serie A, and want to bring him to the Premier League? It makes no sense. When you can get Dominic Calvert-Lewin through the door on a freebie and take a punt on it. Okay. Obviously, the Genk striker is different because, he's younger, very much sort of in the, Muniz role. Right. And, we don't know a lot about him, this Tulu. I think his name's Tulu Arakadere or something. Yeah,
exactly.
But again, he's much more worth a punt than bringing in some guy that is coming to the end of his career. But it's such a Fulham thing to do, Russell, is to go and sign a 32-year-old has-been striker.
See, that to me would make me crazy just because it goes into the Willian category. Can we not do the Willians anymore?
Correct.
Like I'm done with the Willians. Can we stop doing that just because I understand having experienced players, but they have plenty of them now. They don't need that type of player anymore. I don't think so. That's why I was talking about the Genk striker, because I would like them to have a player that's potentially on the rise. But to your point, Calvert-Lewin has experience, but as it's been pointed out, very injury prone. I just want them to bring in a third striker that can compete. I would like one with upside. I understand why you favor the Calvert-Lewin situation. At least I think we're kind of we're looking at it a little bit differently, but we both want the same thing. I just don't want some journeyman coming in to be the third striker after they gave up Mitrovic. It's crap that they've not replaced Mitrovic. And I'm getting all upset at the end of the show because I go back to that. They still have not found a replacement for Alexander Mitrovic. Shame on them for not doing that. Shame on them, honestly.
Yeah, but there might also be another underlying issue is that Silva might not want to upset the balance because, by bringing in another striker, Russ, you've now got 3 players you need to keep happy. And, it was a bit easier last season because he rotated Raul and Muniz and he was able to get away with it. And obviously Raul got injured and Muniz got injured, Raul got injured, whatever. They switched them around. But if you bring in a third striker who who feels that they should be playing regularly, how do you keep the camp happy? How do you keep 3 strikers happy if you're only going to be playing 1 up top every game?
Yeah, I have to share this from Gary. Gary, if he does have a brother that's a striker, how many times is he going to hit the bar like his brother? Okay, because I can't deal with that anymore. Like I said, for me, I know I've been hard on Pereira. I'm just done with Pereira. Like you said, fly me over to England. I'll find a location for him. I'll drive him wherever he wants to go. Whatever team he wants to put. Does he want to go to Wolves? I'll make the drive. I'll drive on the other side of the road to get him there. Okay, I'll do it. I will. I'm used to driving on one side. I'll go to the other side.
Russ, I'll give you the petrol money.
Okay, great show, my friend. Man, do I enjoy talking Fulham with you. The hour has flown by, but I do want to wrap it up. Give me your final thoughts before we wrap up the show.
Final thoughts are, looking forward to an interesting, end of July, beginning of August. And I just hope that, we start seeing some movement. Just want to do a little shout out, Russ. Tomorrow, if those that are watching are around, my little Step 5 team, Crawley Green, playing Luton Town.
Oh, that's great.
In a pre-season friendly at the Brace. So if anyone's around, it's going to be a nice day. Get yourselves down. Come and watch a little Step Side team play against the big boys of League One.
That's great.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Please do take Tony up on that if you can. That's great. Okay, before we wrap up the show, and this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, I'm going to be doing a lot of shows. Tony's going to be joining me, and a lot of them are going to be in not just this summer, but during the season. We'll obviously have free shows, but we're going to be doing a lot that's going to be on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. So I'm sharing this once again. Please do accept the gift of 2 months for free on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Now, the link is it's pinned to my X account, Russ_Goldman, and also on the Cottage Talk X account. So please check it out. It's on the Cottage Talk Facebook page. Please do accept this gift. I've had 16 people accept it. Please, it's 2 months free. So please do check that out. More the merrier to listen and watch shows that are going to be exclusive to the Cottage Talk Patreon page. All right. Tony, thank you so much for doing this.
Russ, can I just add to that? Yeah, all those that are watching, please promote this and get it out there. Russ doesn't know I was going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. He lives, breathes, eats, sleeps Fulham. And he absolutely does a brilliant job covering the club. Honestly, with his hand on his heart, he works incredibly hard behind the scenes. He's so passionate about it. And you know what? So many Fulham fans out there that need to tune into him and to listen to him, because he's got some great views, great opinions. And we're talking about everything that, a club that we all love, that he gives everyone a platform to be a part of. So please get it out there, push it, and get people talking about Cottage Talk, because it's absolutely brilliant. I'm privileged to be a part of it. I love it. And, just get Russ out there and get Cottage Talk, out there. It's a great show, really great show.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I know I feel that way, and you're going to make
I know how hard you work, Russ. So, a lot of people don't, and I know what you put into this. So, you know what? You deserve it, my friend.
Thank you, Tony. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. For Tony Gold, I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.